What's up, Ego Hackers? This is Chase with csjoseph.life, as usual, CS Joseph Podcast, and this is the final episode of season 29, How to Master Your Demon. Welcome to my humble mountain abode. Anyway, we've been talking a lot about each of the 8 different, well, at least up till now, 7 different demon functions, and learning what all of the lessons that they begin to teach. But TI demon, as a result of introverted feeling hero, is definitely, let's just say it's a lot different than most people would expect, and has its own unique set of torments. We've heard me labor on and on and on about SI demon or SE demon, or even NI demon or NE demon. Perception function demons are actually pretty easy to spot, and for the most part, pretty easy to deal with. The decision making or judging demon functions, not so much. And they carry with them a very high difficulty level. However, it is my opinion that TI demon may actually be the most difficult demon function to master or even control or utilize in a healthy manner, especially in today's day and age. The reason why is because we have FI heroes, and FI heroes make decisions constantly based on what they value or what their mood is. They're those people that like to cherry pick ideas from others. Lots of cherry picking, so that they could come up with additional ideas or confirmation of their pre-existing value system. What that means is that they only want to listen to what their itching ears want to hear, typically. An FI hero, they don't really change very often. And in order for them to be willing to change, they have to be hearing the same thing from a host of different people, and those people either don't have the same interest or they're not connected to one another, and they seem kind of all random, etc. And it's at that point the FI hero can finally accept that what they're doing may not be normal or may not actually be okay, and then they change. This is oftentimes the only way to get an FI hero to change for the better or to begin exhibiting healthy behavior that they need to exhibit. It's really only after public shaming. Because of their extroverted thinking inferior, they're very afraid of what other people think of them. They're very afraid of being exposed or losing status with other people around them. And that's why they are most likely to put up a facade of value around other people so that they can continue to feel valuable around people because they look a certain way. When the reality situation is they're putting more emphasis on looking good instead of actually being good people. And that's really a severe problem, and that's where you get stories like the prodigal son, as a result of having that perspective. So already, TI demon is just kind of not really interested in listening to anybody except their own selves, or it would be willing to listen to people because TI is usually the listening function, or at least it's the function that could benefit the most from listening. You could argue that TE is more technically the listening function, technically speaking, but it's always for the purpose of developing or investing into one's own TI function. So they really, really, really struggle with listening. In the same way that TI inferior, for example, has this really demonic opinion with their TE demon, and their TI inferior wants everyone else to listen to them, and they're not willing to listen to anyone. Well, the thing is that an FI hero kind of expects everybody else to give them the opportunity to share their opinion, whether or not people ask for it or not. Because to the FI hero, their value system is paramount, it is tantamount, it is imperative, and no other value system is as valid as their value system, which can really present a problem, because this ends up creating a type of echo chamber of adopted values and adopted standards within one's own mind without taking the time to explore other value systems or other principles or other standards. Granted, when an ISFP is confronted with failure, then they will do this. But not the INFP. Because they lack extroverted sensing and they have SE trickster, failure is not really as much of a concern with them, because from their point of view, they'll just endure and try again. But then you end up finding yourself in a situation where it's the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And that ends up being one of the ultimate hang-ups of the comfort zone of the INFP. At least the ISFP has a failure factor that could protect them. And then eventually, because of that failure, they're forced to trial and error for the rest of their life. And they may not know the long-term consequences of their decision, but they end up getting to a point where they end up discovering what the long-term consequences of their decisions are by looking back. And then noticing that similar immediate reactions sometimes have similar long-term repercussions or long-term consequences. And that's how ultimately the ISFP is able to cope. But given how the FI hero's opinion is so highly important to them, and not being willing to hear their opinion is one of the most hurtful things that you could ever do to an INFP or an ISFP, or tell them that their opinion is irrelevant or it just doesn't matter. That's also extremely hurtful to them. But while it can be hurtful to them, I mean, from my point of view, oh well, because their opinion might be more valuable if they wouldn't cherry pick other people's ideas or cherry pick other people's values. And that's my big problem with them. It's a huge, huge problem. They shouldn't be cherry picking. And all TE inferiors, all FI heroes walk around with this problem of confirmation bias. They want to live in the world of confirmation bias as much as possible before they are confronted with the fact that their own bias towards their own value system may actually be inaccurate. And if they're faced with that, they end up being forced to have this paradigm shift inside themselves, and they have to completely reevaluate every aspect of their soul in order to reconstruct a new principle or a new standard or a new process or a new way of doing something or a new method, like a TE procedure, so that they are confident that they can keep going in the direction that they're going. And it's an extremely high amount of effort, which oftentimes is why the FI hero is so slow. Well, I mean, they are outcome types, after all. They're also behind the scenes. So they are really slow people in general, and this is one of the reasons why, if not the main reason as to why that is. But TI Demon, it's such a huge burden. It's such a huge burden for them because they don't really want to live in the world of reality. To them, reality is some sort of hell. Truth in of its own right is also a form of hell to these people. They absolutely hate the truth. They hate the truth because, from their point of view, the truth does nothing but cause pain and expose. It also is like they're being put into a prison that they can't escape. This is oftentimes why INFPs will daydream about being elsewhere, or, dreaming of their ideal situation or ideal solution or ideal environment. ISFPs do this too, especially when it comes to their various projects that they take on. They're just trying to make the world a better place. And TI Demon reminds them constantly that the world is not a better place. Not a better place at all. And this can cause IFPs to end up with their heads in the sand because they spend so much time avoiding the pain of the truth, the pain that is always associated with truth and ultimately reality thereof, because of how painful that truth is, that they end up becoming extremely ignorant people, sometimes to their own detriment. They also become blinded by everything and ultimately subservient to society around them. Even the ISFP, who is, ultimately pragmatic, they will oftentimes surrender themselves to authority so that they don't have to face the truth, because from their point of view, the burden of truth, the burden of reality, this hell that is the truth, becomes somebody else's problem, and then they don't have to worry about that being their problem anymore, like at all. And in my opinion, it's really sad. So based on that, TI Demon really, really is a personal hell. And the problem with TI Demon also is that if an IFP is forced to admit something is true, especially about their own character, which can also be a problem. When it comes to their own character, they, well, just by admittance alone, or at least saying that they agree with what everybody else thinks when it comes to their character or something they're doing or something they are about, they have no choice but to make those changes. And then they will, just because they admitted it. It's so funny watching ESTP, INFP relationships, because those relationships are based on, well, they're bronze pair relationships and they enable each other. But in the times that they don't, the ESTP just constantly exposes the INFP over and over and over. And it's one of the ESTP's highest needs to get the INFP, or anyone for that matter, to admit things. Because the ESTP knows that if FI Hero admits something, then FI Hero will automatically have to change, and that ultimately FI Hero will change, especially if they keep being consistently exposed by the ESTP and the truth constantly exposes them. IFPs don't ever want to be revealed. They don't want this ideal world that they're hoping for, holding out for ISFP, holding out for INFP. They don't want that exposed, because it could be the subject of mockery, the subject of embarrassment, or they know that people around them just won't agree, and that they would have to potentially defend their ideals or their idealism to other people, because they know that there are people who live in the TI hell of reality, the TI hell of the truth. Now, I know I'm saying reality a lot, and it's typically, linked to SE as a function, which is fair, but I'm just talking about the actual hard, painful, harsh truth that people don't realize is a thing. And that can be a problem. That could be a serious, serious issue. And like I said, like in past lectures, the INFP is responsible, ultimately responsible for, how do I put it? Bring about wisdom to the world. The problem is, if they're not on the path to bringing about more wisdom in the world, they will make everyone else around them ignorant. And that's the worst part about INFPs. Well, ISFPs, that's the same way. They will also make other people ignorant around them. And it literally becomes the blind leading the blind. And that applies to no one more than IFPs. They really are the archetype or the epitome of the blind leading the blind in almost every area, in every circumstance of their life. Unless, of course, they have a good support structure of people around them who are willing to publicly shame them or criticize them in some capacity. And then they have to leave themselves open to criticism, open to that ego attack, where their ego investments, their FI ego investments exist. And nobody puts more weight on ego investments than an FI hero. And that's why they just want to find information or ideas or opinions out there that support their ego investments, rather than evaluating whether or not they should be having those ego investments to begin with, which is what ignorance is all about. So this is why FI heroes oftentimes have a really hard time with me, because when I'm around them or when I'm with them, I ultimately destroy their ego investments. I destroy their paradigm, because their paradigm, for example, if you have a man who built his house on the rock, the rains come down, the winds go up, his house is not going to get swept away because it has a solid foundation. But the mind of an FI hero rarely, especially in Western society, has a solid foundation. It is the man who built his house on the sand, and it gets swept away. And I basically become the storm or the deluge or the maelstrom or the waterfall or the river or the broken dam that completely wipes them out because their foundation is weak. And instead of being willing to rise to the occasion and change for the better, they'd rather just do the expedient thing, not the meaningful thing, and run. Or criticize or demonize or or being pedantic, or whatever these, tools that they have, and like insert every logical fallacy known to man. That's how an FI hero argues. They end up getting to a place where they're not able to contribute to themselves or even to people around them. And their entire ego basically has died, and they have to redo it again. But they're going to run away from that. They don't want to let go of those ego investments. They don't want to let go of those, quote, values, etc. Even though those values, proven by me, for example, in that TI moment, have been rendered completely and utterly useless because they don't mean anything. And you'd think that an FI hero would be all about doing what is meaningful, when in reality, because of TI Demon, they do what is expedient most of all. There isn't anyone else more on this planet that runs away from the truth than FI heroes. They run away from it. They don't embrace it. They run from it. And this is why I criticize FI heroes of being the fakest people of all of the types. They would rather look like they're honest and look true instead of actually being honest. And at times, yeah, sure, they could be honest with their feelings, but they're not honest with their values. Not always. Most of the time, they're not, especially the younger they are. Because like I said, they have that confirmation bias. And when they're out in the world listening to what other people have to say, or things that they read, things that they watch, things that they hear, again, they're only gathering data and information that supports what they already are predisposed to believe. They are just trying to find supporting evidence to what they already value, which is ultimately a form, it's an FI form of echo chamber. Just like TI users will make decisions based on preferred knowledge or preferred input, well, it's the same thing. Like, these FI users are making decisions based on preferred thoughts of others, preferred data, preferred studies. Like, for some reason, they believe that because a study was conducted by Harvard versus a study conducted by UC Chapel Hill, they're going to think that the Harvard one is more valid and more credible. When the reality of the situation, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. So these are the pretenders. These are the people who pretend to be the most intellectually honest, but the reality is that they're the most intellectually dishonest. And they already know it deep down. But like I said, if they have to acknowledge the truth, then all of a sudden the burden of change is on them, and they'd actually have to do that. It's so much easier to just run from the truth so that they can keep their lie up and keep how they look up, their facade up to other people, so that they don't lose standing with people, because they would never have to admit that they've done anything wrong, or that they were intellectually dishonest, or that they have confirmation bias. But the reality of the situation is, these particular types of people, they are the biggest pretenders. They are the most intellectually dishonest people that you'd ever meet. And no, I'm not talking about right-wingers. I'm not talking about leftists. I'm not talking about any of that crap. I'm talking about regular people. It doesn't matter what their walk of life is. It doesn't matter their origin. Cognitively, these people still run away from the truth in any form, because the truth challenges directly their ideal world that they want, or they're holding out for, or trying to create. Because from their point of view, if they can run away from the truth fast enough and long enough, eventually they could bring about their ideal world into reality so that their ideal world becomes the truth, and then they won't have to run anymore. And then they could look at everyone else around them and be like, see, I told you so, even though they were just running away from it and trying to make something true to begin with, which seldom, if ever, happens. If they end up making their ideal world true, it's because it was already true to begin with, not because they created it. And telling this to an INFP is hilarious because, they walk around with their philosopher's stone, they have their I win button for life, etc. And they like to take credit for the fact that they brought something into existence and they brought something into the truth, etc., from the ether, when that was never the case to begin with. It wasn't in the ether to begin with. It was already true, and they just bumbled their way into the truth, similar to how an ESFP would with their TI trickster. Because the INFP is willing to trial and error in as much as like an INTP would, they end up having a discovery of what is true. And their opinion and their value system had nothing to do with influencing truth being created. FI heroes literally believe that they can create truth, like it's a substance that they can make. The reality of the situation is that's incorrect. That's not true. And that is the hubris, the arrogance of TI Demon. It's so funny how much FI heroes out of everybody tell everybody else how TI users are arrogant, especially when TI users claim that they can shape social norms, etc. And these IFPs are the first people to reject it, and they're the first people to call them arrogant. Yet these same IFPs, with their little TI demon, have far more hubris and believing that they themselves get to create truth. That's not real. They are pretenders in that regard. It is absolutely wrong. It's almost like they're playing God. You can't let them do that. No one can. For no one should be playing God to begin with. But this is literally the perspective that they end up having throughout their lives because of TI Demon. And like all demons, demons lie. For example, the devil, the father of lies, right? The TI Demon lies. And the TI Demon wants to blame everybody else. Blame the entire world, for example, that how dare the rest of the world inhibit the IFP from being able to bring about their valued, sacred ideal, right? How dare the world get in the way of that? How dare society determine or take away my potential for having the ideal world that I want? And they blame everybody else. They blame everybody else. And literally their mind is in this cage, and they're shackled by their ego investments. And they can't get away from these ego investments. And the only person that can take them out of these shackles is themselves. But the thing is that they themselves believe that these values that they have, whether or not they're true or not, are the reality. Because from their point of view is, what can be higher in the world than an ideal? What can be more important in the world than the ideal? Well, let me tell you folks, the truth. The truth is important. See, FI heroes need to realize that if they could use their demon function as a tool of truth, a hammer perhaps, or a sword, or a wrench, it doesn't matter. If they could use that as a tool, they can actually build and create that ideal world that they're looking for. But because they're trying to run away from the truth and how it burns and how it hurts and how it exposes, just like the fruit of the tree of life, which is pure truth. The fruit of the tree of life is pure truth. But that fruit, it's got thorns on it. It's really hard to crack open the fruit and get into the gushy center. And when they eat the gushy center, they get a stomachache, and then they barf, flu-like symptoms. And then they have the worst diarrhea they've ever had in their life. It's an extremely painful experience, especially for an FI hero when being confronted from the truth. But what they don't realize is that the essence of the truth itself, that once they have it in their hands and can accept it, they could utilize that truth to build the ideal world. If they realize that they need to stop starting with their own values and actually start with what's actually true, and they'd have to spend their life discovering what is true, then they realize that their I win button for life, for example, for INFPs, or the ultimate treasure for ISFPs, really comes down to them holding truth in their hands. It's like that movie Rocket Man, that Disney movie Rocket Man. I've got the whole world in my hands. Well, the whole world in your hands in that moment. And by the way, that was an INFP saying that. The whole world is literally truth incarnate. They really do have the whole world in their hands. Their mind can categorize and come to a higher understanding through TE aspirational everything that is in reality. And that's a fact. They have that wondrous, amazing capability. And that capability is important. That capability is what sets them apart from other people. This is why I claim, like, for example, an INFP is one of the most, if not the most brilliant of all the types, because it has the ability to collect truth. The problem is it has to be willing to face it. And by collecting all of that truth that it's able to collect, then it can create the ideal world. Then they are ultimately bending to the truth, and then they become the conduit for the ideal because they've bent to the truth. Whereas it's hubris, where their demon function causes them to believe that they can cause the truth to bend to them. And that's the problem. This is why IFPs ultimately run from the truth instead of use it as an agent or an ingredient or a tool in their purposes, for their purposes. Because if you know what's true first, you can work backwards. You can also work forwards to get to your goal or get to the outcome that you as an FI hero are looking for. If you don't know where the truth is, then you're blind and you'll be lost, and then you'll become the blind leading the blind. But if you know what the truth is, you know what your starting point is, or you know what your end point is with the outcome that you're trying to get to, and then you're no longer blind, and then you are able to lead. Because all IFPs deep down want to lead. Why is that? Because the subconscious of the ISFP is the ENTJ, and the subconscious of the INFP is the ESTJ. Both of them are direct, initiating outcome. They are natural leaders. They wish to lead people. But until they are willing to accept truth in their life, they will always be the blind leading the blind, and never actually a true leader. These two types have to come face to face with their own internal demon every single day, and be willing to traverse Dante's Inferno, hell itself, the fires of hell, hellfire, because truth, folks, truth is hellfire. Hell exists because we didn't study at the tree of life like we should have. We decided to study at the tree of knowledge, the tree of subjectivity, but we abandoned the tree of life, the tree of truth, the tree of objectivity. And that's why we suffer hellfire, because we haven't finished our lesson. Our lesson has to be completed. And that's why truth, the longer you run away from the truth, the more it's going to burn you, the hotter the flames are. If you embrace the truth, it's going to hurt a lot up front. It's going to really, really burn and screw with you. But then, like most bodies do, when confronted with a lot of heat, your body will acclimate to the heat. And slowly over time, that hellfire will not burn you so easily. You've become accustomed to it. You've become refined. You've become sharp, like the chaff that's been burned away as you are being smelted to a more pure golden version of yourself, a piece of yourself or part of yourself, or maybe your whole self, closer and closer to your true self as you are baptized in the flames of truth. What an amazing crucible, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure the INFPs are definitely eating that all up. But that's ultimately what TI Demon is, a crucible. A crucible for the ego of FI Hero to be crucified upon so that they can die to themselves, so they can be alive in truth. They can stop being the pretender, and the pretender is slain, and their true self finally awakens with power. Power like an angel instead of the weakness of the pretending demon. The angel of truth. This is TI Angel. This is who they can become. So instead of blaming everyone else and their misuse of truth, blaming everybody else for lacking values, telling yourself that you're justified in manipulating a facade or telling a narrative. This could even be from a media standpoint. This could be from a political perspective. It doesn't matter. Instead of doing that, you just say what it is. You just say the truth. Who cares if you look bad? Are you really so ideal that you want your little ideal world, but you're not willing to sacrifice how you look for the sake of your ideal world? You do realize that if you're going to get the ideal world that you're looking for and you're working for, you got to be willing to make yourself look bad. You got to be willing to sacrifice your status. You got to be willing to risk everyone around you thinking you're stupid or crazy or kook, for example. You got to be willing to do that. You got to be willing to go that far. You got to be willing to crucify yourself for the sake of the truth. One way or another, you will. One way or another, truth will catch up to you. One way or another, you will be crucified. You will be faced with a hellfire of truth in your life, one way or another. But the further you run from it, the hotter it will be. The closer you go to it, the more accustomed to the truth you get. Truth is pure light. It's the light, and it is fiery, and it burns with hellfire. It's so hot. But if you get closer and closer and closer to it, slowly but surely, you'll become refined. You'll become a better person. You won't need to have to manage a facade anymore. You could be truly honest with somebody with how you feel and also with what you believe, regardless of the consequences. And it's at that moment those people will truly actually respect you after being repulsed by you. And then they will follow your lead. And then you'll be a true seer. And it will no longer be the blind leading the blind. Not at all. This is what you can have. This is what you can have as an IFP when it comes to the truth. If you can wield the truth, not just for your sake, but for everybody's sake. If you're willing to die to yourself, let the pretender die so that you could be alive in truth. Where you're taking the hellfire, the sharp edge of the sword with you, where it becomes a part of you. Then, and only then, will you have the power to reshape reality into the ideal world or the ideal environment that you seek every single day. You know, oftentimes you hear IFPs say, fake it until you make it. That is the exact incorrect TI Demon way to do it. You have to understand that you've made it because you didn't fake it. That's the difference. Because if you keep living life, you know, fake it until you make it, everyone around you will start thinking that you're just a dirty cheater. They'll start thinking that you're a bad person. They'll start thinking that, you know, you took the easy road or that you're a dick. Like, so for example, if you got rich, they'll think you cheated or that you're a dick or that you're greedy or that you had to harm somebody to get to where you were. That none of what you did had anything to do with hard work, for example. That is what your future would be. But if you make it because you didn't fake it, right? Well, that says something entirely. That sends the message to other people that, yeah, hard work is actually a thing, but it also sends the message that anyone can be successful like me, as long as you're willing to not be idle, as long as you're willing to continue to stay loyal to your cause for your ISFP and INFP virtues. And at that point, people, again, will respect you enough to follow your lead into a better tomorrow and a better ideal world. But TI Demon, just wants to lie to you. But what is it really trying to tell you? Because if you could actually listen to your TI Demon, it's trying to tell you just how fake you are. It's trying to tell you how subjective you are and how subjective your values are, and how your values may not have anything to do with the truth, and how your idealism could actually be based on a lie, and that if you end up seeking to create the world based on your idealism, you are actually becoming the thing that you have sworn to destroy. You are actually perpetuating even bigger lies than the reality of lies you already live in. TI Demon hates being lied to most of all. Being lied to with TE inferior and then believing that lie is ultimately their greatest fear. It's such a huge greatest fear for them that even if they find out that they were lied to, they will still protect their ego for believing that lie, sometimes even to their grave, because they're so embarrassed that they've been had, that they were manipulated, and they allowed themselves to be manipulated. How sad. Why can't they just take responsibility and admit that, like almost everyone else out there, they've been had, they were manipulated? This is TI Demon hubris. This is arrogance. That they walk around believing that they can't be so easily manipulated. I'm sorry, but FI heroes, you are the most easily manipulated of all the types. So easily manipulated. All you have to do is blackmail you or increase your status in some way, make you look good, give you a little creature comforts or your freedom, etc. Pretend that you're giving us a good experience, or make you feel wanted and sought after, etc. Even though none of those things could be true, but your ego just eats it all up, and your TI Demon knows you're being lied to. And your TI Demon is trying to tell you that you have this problem where you end up at risk of believing just about anything. And even when you do, and you err in your life and you're held accountable for believing just about anything, then you get mad and blame everybody else instead of being willing to take responsibility for yourself and your own intellectual confirmation bias irresponsibility. You are the people that, well, if it sounds good, then it must be true. That's literally what you people are. And it's really sad. Why can you not listen to your TI Demon tell the truth? Your ego can't accept the truth. Your ego can't accept what the TI Demon is saying. So the TI Demon has to lie to you and tell you it's everybody else and that this is a world of lies. When it's really saying, my world, the world I create for myself and my family and in my own mind, is a world of lies. Because it knows of your confirmation bias. It knows how fake you are. It knows of your facade. It knows that you just cherry pick ideas to go search out what fits with how you feel and what you value already, instead of being willing to change your values at all. It's so hard to change an FI hero. In fact, they are the hardest to change of all of the types. TI, most people think TI hero, TI parents are the most stubborn. Yeah, we're really stubborn. Absolutely. But there's nothing more stubborn than an FI hero. My relationship with my brother-in-law, for example, he's an ISFP. He's so insecure around me because he feels so stupid when he's around me, but I never treat him like he's stupid. But he's so insecure that he just wants to run away from me because I have this tendency to tell the truth. I have a tendency to expose him, and he feels so bad about himself that he doesn't want to feel bad at all. So I've gotten so tired of that behavior that I just have no choice but to ultimately mock him. And that can be a problem. Keep these things in mind. If you're not willing to listen to your TI demon already telling you, well, guess what? It's going to plunge you further into the world of lies, the world of lies that you yourself made, that you yourself created. And it's going to be your own damn fault. And then all of a sudden, you're going to find yourself complaining and shutting down and being super idle and super stuck in your comfort zone, super treacherous and betray people, because you're going to be blaming everybody else for your own lies. And that's the worst part. That's the worst part about life. And a lot of people just don't understand that. They'll never understand that because they're not willing to listen to that inner voice that's already exposing them. And that's why they have such a negative reaction to everybody else. Everybody else. Such a huge negative reaction when it's like, okay, hey, you've just exposed me. And then they're going to seek out to destroy their reputation. Why? Because their reputation themselves was destroyed. If you want to have a good reputation, how about you live honestly, you live in truth, and you allow yourself to be corrected? Because it is written, correct a wise man and he will love you, but correct a fool and he will hate you. Why is it I notice TE inferiors being far more foolish than far wiser? They have TE aspirational. They could be the wisest of us all, but they choose not to because to them, their lies are the most important thing. To them, protecting their ego investments is more important than determining the truth. For the truth could set them free, but they see the truth as a prison that holds their idealism and doesn't allow their idealism to come out, and inhibits them from having their ideal world or their ideal life. What they fail to realize is that the truth itself is the path. The obstacle, the truth in this case, the obstacle is the way to getting that ideal world that they're looking for, that ideal world that they seek, that ideal world that they want. And they can have it, but they have to be willing to accept the truth, so that their ego investments, their worthless ego, fake ego investments are burned away and replaced with the truth. And then they can find their values based on the truth and not values that are based on, well, it feels good. It feels right. That's the path to ignorance, my friends. And that is how you will ultimately be so unhappy, and you'll blame everybody else for your unhappiness. Is that really the life you want? Is that really the truth that you seek? I know for a fact it's not what I would seek. It's not what I would want. So perhaps you should change. Perhaps you should consider the truth and consider where you're going with your TI angel. If you want to shape and prevent a world of lies that stops your ideal world from coming to be, seek the world of truth first and bring about the world of truth so that all of the lies are burned away, as if it was a great fire that destroyed a deadwood forest so that new life could spring and bring about a better tomorrow. That is the purpose of TI Demon, becoming TI Angel. If you found this lecture useful, helpful, educational, enlightening, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching this season, folks. Thank you for being with us every step of the way and continuing to contribute to this team and to this organization. With that being said, folks, I'll see you guys tonight.